Hey guys, welcome to the episode of True Crimes and Weird Times. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Kim.
And today we're going to do an episode that showcases our home state of Georgia completely by accident. I'm going to be telling you about a little girl in Ellerslie, Georgia who had a very special friend as a 3-year-old.
And I'm going to be telling you about Janice Buttrum, the youngest woman to be given the death penalty in the U.S.
Wow. Lisa and Andrew Wyrick and their daughter Heidi moved into their very first home in Ellerslie, Georgia in 1989. Now, Ellerslie is a small town, and the family moved there because they wanted a safe, quiet town to raise their children in.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people move around here.
And Georgia's a great place for it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Heidi Wyrick was only 3 years old when they moved there, and this is when she first started seeing spirits. Now, Andrew and Lisa didn't think much about it at first. I mean, she's 3 years old. They just moved to a new town, a new home. Maybe this is just an imaginary friend. This is her way of coping.
That's what I would assume.
Yeah.
Imaginary friends.
That's the first thing I would assume, too. However, Lisa did think it was odd that Heidi would have full conversations with this imaginary friend. You know, she never heard anything back, but, you know, she thought it was odd.
See, I remember having an imaginary friend, but I don't think I talked out loud to it very much.
I never had an imaginary friend. It was more like I just talked to myself.
So you were just weird.
I was just weird. Oh, God, yeah. I was totally weird. So Lisa finally sat down with Heidi and started asking her about this new friend she had. Heidi described this friend as an older man. He dressed in a black suit and a top hat, which is kind of cool to me. And Lisa thought this was strange since, you know, Heidi's imaginary friend was an old man, you know, instead of a child like her.
What? I mean, that's weird.
Yeah.
My imaginary friend was definitely a little girl like I was.
Yeah, and normally for children, they're going to project what they know.
Right.
And it would be a child. But no, Heidi sees an older man in a black suit.
Creepy.
A little creepy. Now, Lisa asked Heidi the name of this imaginary friend, and Heidi told her that his name was Mr. Gordy.
That's specific.
Pretty specific. But Gordy kind of also sounds a little bit like a made-up name, maybe. Also, Heidi mentioned that she and Mr. Gordy would play on the swings together, or, you know, just in her room. They just hang out, her and Mr. Gordy. Now that Lisa had thought about it, she did notice Heidi playing on her swing set or walking with her hand up in the air, reaching upwards, you know, like she was holding someone's hand.
Ooh.
Yeah, and nothing would be there. And of course, she heard her have conversations with no replies. So it was starting to look a little weird. And when Lisa would ask whose hand she was holding, of course, Heidi would reply that, oh, it's Mr. Gordy. And Heidi talked about Mr. Gordy a lot, which is not particularly strange considering that if this was truly an imaginary friend, she would talk about them anyway. Kids tend to do that.
Yeah.
Or if it wasn't, Heidi was just simply talking about her new ghost buddy because she saw him all the time. They were hanging out all the time.
Also makes sense.
In a creepy, gross way.
Yep.
Either way, Lisa tried to brush this off as, you know, Heidi just adjusting to the move, to the new town, the new home. And Heidi actually talks about her experiences later in life and mentions that she had no idea that Mr. Gordy wasn't real when she was a kid.
Oh.
Yeah, like she thought she was just hanging out with an old man.
Oh.
Yeah. In fact, she claims that she saw Mr. Gordy up until she was 8 years old on a daily basis.
Wow.
Yeah. And they would sit and talk, and then he would just take her hand and they would go play on the swing or go play somewhere. So, like, this was just a daily occurrence. This was Mr. Gordy.
Just good old Mr. Gordy.
Just good old Mr. Gordy. Family friend. So one day, Heidi heard the doorbell ring, and she went to answer it. And when she opened the door, she saw a man with an injured hand wearing a bloodstained shirt. So, of course, she freaks out. She runs and gets her mom, tells her everything that happened, and she said that the man's name was Lon. Now, Lisa is obviously concerned. She goes to see what's going on at the door, and when she gets there, no one's there.
Of course not.
Of course not. But, you know, Naturally, she's scared. She's worried somebody's around the house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to believe my kid if they
Yeah.
say someone's at the door.
That's my first guess. Somebody just ran off. She calls her husband, Andrew, and she asks him to come home, and he searches around the house. I think he asks a couple of neighbors, and nothing. There was nothing there. Now, also around this time, Lisa's sister Joyce moves in next door. And of course, I'm sure they see each other a lot. They're talking, and Lisa mentions, all this stuff with Heidi and her seeing the one-handed man at the door. And Joyce offers to try to find some information on this guy. Joyce offers to find this information on him and maybe who owned the home previously. Maybe this had something to do with that. Of course, Lisa agrees, because why not? I would want to know.
Yeah.
Now, Joyce discovered that the owner before the last owner, so
2 owners ago.
2 owners ago, yes, was a man named James Gordy.
Okay.
Yeah. And James Gordy had died in 1974. So this is a long time ago.
Yep.
And of course, Lisa freaks out. She realizes, what if this is Heidi's imaginary friend? This is his name. It matches up. This is the house.
Yeah.
She's starting to put the things together.
That's super creepy.
Super creepy. So Lisa sits Heidi down, and I'm still thinking she's really young at this point. Mm-hmm. She sits Heidi down and explains to her that Mr. Gordy had died, that he was dead.
What?
Which is really strange. I don't know.
I don't think I would do that to my child. Just personally. I don't know.
I'm not judging or anything.
Yeah.
There are different circumstances, but I
don't know if I'd be like, hey, your imaginary friend is dead.
Yeah. You're talking to a ghost, sweetie. But when Heidi hears this news, she just simply asks if she can go visit his grave. I mean, by this point, I'm sure he's a great friend.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know if I'd be maybe later and then forget. But Lisa takes her, and Heidi, who was still too young to read at this point, was able to find James Gordy's gravestone without any help.
Oh.
She just went straight to it.
Man, I don't have any holes to poke in this one so far.
Mark this down, folks. This is a day to be remembered in history. Holidays will be created in this honor. So Lisa asks the previous owner, whose name is actually Kelly, asks for pictures of the home. Just pictures, to see what it looked like. Now, Heidi sees these pictures and points at a man in one of the photos and tells her mom, this was the man that she saw at the door that night. This is the injured one-hand man, bloodstained clothes. This is him. So according to Kelly, the previous owner, the man's name was Lon, and he was actually Kelly's uncle.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, she said that Lon had lost his hand in a cotton gin accident around the age of 20, and that he had died from cancer in 1957.
Oh.
Yeah. So, second ghost.
It's super creepy that she got his name right.
I know. So, of course, Lisa and Andrew were shocked. Why wouldn't you be? My kid sees ghosts. Great.
Yay.
Yay. But they weren't really sure what to do with this information. I mean, what do you do?
I don't know what you would do.
You can't stop this.
You just have to make sure they're not afraid.
I guess so.
I'd probably see a psychiatrist just in case.
Yeah. So you do what any normal, sane person would do and buy her a dog. Which
that's okay.
Maybe the dog was a psychologist. I don't know. Dr. Dog. Now, they were hoping that this would keep Heidi distracted. Maybe, yay, a dog, let's play with it, and not Mr. Gordy. But it did for a while until the dog started staring into corners when there's nothing there, and it would start growling.
So, creepy dog stuff.
Creepy dog stuff, like Amityville horror dog stuff.
So my cat used to stare at corners, and I'm terrified of bugs. Oh. So my cat used to stare at corners, and I always used to tell her there better be a ghost up there because...
You were more scared of the bugs than the ghost. I will say my oldest, we would be playing on the floor a lot of times, and her and our cat would look in the same direction at the same time. And that was super creepy.
Ugh.
So I made her look at me instead and just didn't think about it. So the dog's staring into corners, staring into hallways, it starts growling. And they said that the dog would growl at nothing. And of course, this makes them uncomfortable. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd be worried about the dog if it was growling at nothing too. safety of your kid and stuff.
Exactly. There's more safety issues, but with everything going on,
yeah,
I would be worried either way. But it kind of takes care of itself because it wasn't long after that the dog ran away from the home and they could never find it again.
Oh,
I know. It was sad that it ran off, but it was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. That dog was done.
He was done. Now, after this is when the family started experiencing things happening in the house. This wasn't just Mr. Gordy anymore. Objects would start moving on their own. Doors would open and close. Lisa said at one time that Heidi and a real friend, an actual person, were playing at home, and she was watching as they were playing, and she saw a chair being pulled out by itself, and then it flipped over as if it were being thrown, just out of nowhere. So, like, pretty basic poltergeist stuff.
Yeah.
You know. Lisa also claimed that she could hear voices speaking over her at night when she was in bed. And it was a lot of whispers, but then she would start hearing her name being called out.
I couldn't sleep in that house anymore. But also, what are they getting out of this story? Anything? Because that's always my next guess is...
Why would they be... Okay, I'm going to spoil this. Nothing happens. Like this.
No movie deals, no book deals, no...
Well, hang on.
Okay. I was starting to find my holes to poke.
But long after all of this happened...
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there. So Lisa finally decides to speak to their pastor, which I feel like I would have already done this. Yeah, or find a priest and just bless my house or something.
As soon as there was a Mr. Gordy who was a real person.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't let it get any farther than that. But she speaks to her pastor about what was happening, and she asks about ghosts. Are they real? And the pastor told her that he didn't believe ghosts were real, but that demons were definitely a possibility.
Okay, that's worse.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the family was freaked out, but they didn't want to move. They couldn't, really. I mean...
Yeah, it's not very easy to just up and move.
Yeah, you can't just leave. So they actually lived there for many years.
That sucks.
Yeah. Eventually, Lisa becomes pregnant with their second child, and that's about the time Heidi began telling her parents that something bad was in the house. And she couldn't really explain what the bad thing was. But she said that it was a dark figure that would appear as a shadow in her room.
Ooh.
Yeah. And she said that the figure would make her room really cold and that it would pull on her hair. Now, when I first heard this is about the same time children start to regress a little bit when there's a second child.
I was just wondering if she maybe was acting out for attention because she wasn't getting as much now.
Well, and that's what I originally thought. Because, I mean, there's a baby on the way. They're doing nursery and baby clothes. They're just making, and she's just wanting a little bit of attention. But one morning, Heidi wakes up and they find 3 deep scratches on her face.
Oh.
Yeah. And even though their daughter has been talking about all of this poltergeist stuff, Lisa has been seeing it with her eyes. Mr. Gordy, Lon, yada, yada, yada. Lisa and Andrew just chalk it up. Like, they just convince themselves that Heidi must have done this to herself that night in her sleep. I mean, kids do that, but not deep scratches, for one.
That's probably what I would have assumed, too. Like, she must have scratched herself last night somehow.
Yeah, but if it's deep scratches, though...
How did she not wake up?
Yeah. But if this was truly some kind of poltergeist or something, maybe they were in denial. Maybe they didn't want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in this home. They're building a family.
But they already kind of know about the ghost stuff. Like, why would they pretend it's not happening anymore?
Because the first ghosts
Because it was never happening to start with?
Well, think about it, though. The first ghosts weren't benevolent.
That's true. Yeah, they were all pretty friendly ghosts.
Yeah. And now all of this bad stuff is happening. I was like, no. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So they're like, no. And I guess the figure wasn't making itself clear enough. So the next morning, Andrew woke up to find deep scratches on his side and his face.
Oh.
Yeah, so, this meant business. And Heidi told him that it was the dark figure that had made the scratches. So, after the birth of their second child, whose name is Jordan, Lisa and Andrew decided to take Heidi to a parapsychologist who was named Dr. William Roll. And that is hard to say altogether. And I don't know why it took this long for them to take her to some kind of psychologist, not just, to anybody to talk to.
I probably would have after Mr. Gordy.
Yeah. Well, and Mr. Gordy wasn't so bad. I mean, at least this was something nice. But
or maybe after lawn. Like, if my kid sees a bloody person on our front porch.
That's something we need to talk about. I want
to know why.
Yeah, we need to talk about this psychologically, if anything, because she just saw somebody covered in blood and she's a child. But anyway, they talked to Dr. Roll and they tell him everything that's happened. And they had Heidi point out Mr. Gordy from photos again to prove, that she knew who it was. But even after all of this, Dr. Roll simply told her parents that she was suffering from delusions.
No big deal.
No big deal. Which I thought was really weird because he's a parapsychologist. Isn't that the stuff he works with?
I don't know.
But maybe he's somebody who tries to rule out the...
Yeah, maybe that didn't seem to make a lot of sense to him. And he's like, I don't think that's what's happening, guys. I think your kid might need some help.
I think she's cuckoo. So eventually the media learned about the Wyricks.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Wonder how.
Okay. A reporter drove to the home, but claimed that she got an awful feeling from the house. She didn't even make it to the house. They left before they even interviewed the family. But because of this, Heidi started getting a lot of unwanted attention from the media, and I'm sure people in town, because it was a small town. I think it was a population of 3,000.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. So everybody already knew about this. So Lisa and her sister Joyce discussed all of these events that had happened, and then they started remembering some things about their mother. Their mother would talk about seeing and hearing things as well, but they were kids, so they just assumed maybe she was making things up, trying to be silly, making up stories for them. But now it was starting to hold a little bit of validity because now Lisa's daughter is doing the same thing.
Which kind of makes sense, but my first conclusion would be oh no, there's a mental illness that runs in my family.
Yeah. Always figure out the medical stuff first.
Yeah, completely rule out a medical cause before you assume a haunting.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it wasn't long that Jordan, her second child, her son, began speaking to someone around the age of 3 as well. It wasn't Mr. Gordy. He claimed that he was playing with a little girl and had even told them that the little girl was friendly.
Well, that's a plus.
That's a plus. At least it wasn't a bad one. But Lisa wasn't feeling too great about both of her children now seeing and hearing things.
Can't blame her.
Yeah. So they called Dr. Roll again, which I don't know why I would go to the same parapsychologist who told me that my kid was crazy the first time.
Unless they believed him.
But I feel like I would have gotten a second opinion.
Probably.
So, especially if my other kid's doing the same thing now.
Yep.
The doctor this time also called in a well-known psychic.
Oh, this is going good places.
The psychic came into the home. She instantly felt the presence of a little girl in the home.
Convenient.
Well, I would like to think this was without any prompting.
I would hope so, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it.
Yeah. She also sensed a spirit that she believed to be Mr. Gordy.
So she obviously already knew about Mr. Gordy.
Yeah. But she could also sense 3 dark spirits in the home. The family wants more answers. Obviously, you can't just say, oh yeah, there's 5 ghosts in your home.
Hey, no big deal.
See you
Good
later.
luck, guys.
So they called a second psychic to come and visit the home. Now, this psychic claimed that there were 3 demonic entities in the house. She said that one of the demons was trying to inhabit Jordan's room. And maybe he was just tired. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Maybe he just wanted...
Maybe just wanted a nap.
She said that the other demon was trying to attach itself to Heidi, but that a good spirit was fighting it off. And she believed that good spirit was Mr. Gordy.
Oh.
Which is kind of cool. And she said that the third demon would actually travel between the living room and the wall over the parents' bed, which could be why Lisa heard voices above her at night in bed.
That makes sense.
She then told the family that there was a portal in the family's living room fireplace. And this was a portal between the spirit world and the real world. And these entities could find their way through the portal and just didn't want to leave.
Cool. So they got a portal house on accident.
Yeah. So the family calls their pastor again, say, hey, can you come bless and cleanse this house?
Please come close this portal to hell.
Come close this portal to the ghost world. But it doesn't go the way it's supposed to. He comes in and cleanses the home or whatever, blesses it. But one night, Heidi claimed to awake to a very bad feeling. She said that she saw at the end of her bed a dark presence, and she screamed for her parents. I mean, she's still a kid.
Yeah.
And when they ran into her room, they said that they found the spirit had yanked Heidi from her bed and was holding her upside down above the floor.
Oh.
Yeah, so she's hanging upside down. I doubt they could see it.
Yeah, I pictured her just hanging upside down.
They just see her hanging upside down. So after this, apparently this was enough for them to finally leave the home.
I'd say so.
Yeah. I think that would do it for me. These days, Heidi leads a seemingly normal life. From what I could find, I'm going to just out myself. She was born the same year I was. And she's probably 34, 35 years old now. She's married, has children of her own. I could not find if her children see anything. Maybe it skips generations because her mom.
Yeah. Or maybe she just doesn't want her kids in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Or maybe, it's not real.
Anyway. And after the media attention her story received, she was actually able to start connecting with others with similar experiences. So it kind of has given her a sense of relief. Like she's not by herself in this.
Yeah.
She does say that she still sees spirits, though she hasn't seen Mr. Gordy in a very long time. So maybe the whole point was for Mr. Gordy to protect her while she was a child.
Oh,
Which is super sweet. I love you, Mr. Gordy. She does say that sometimes they come as different things. According to a WTVM article, which is a local news station, I think, she claimed to see things such as humans, animals, sometimes just blank figures. And according to Unsolved Mysteries, she does continue to see the mysterious dark figure from before. She's quoted as saying, "I can sense when it's an evil presence or if it's a good presence. I can sense evil. You wouldn't believe the feelings you get. I've been literally sick to my stomach." Now, again, like I'd mentioned, there are no explanations that have ever been made for her visions. She doesn't seem to bank on this story. Mm-hmm. However, there was a documentary made. There was a book written, and The Haunting in Connecticut 2, Ghost of Georgia, was based on this story.
Okay.
Now, if they got monetary gains from that, I don't know.
I would guess probably. Maybe.
I mean, it is their story.
Yeah.
But just for the mere fact that, nothing's ever been explained about it, kind of makes me wonder if it's just a thing. We hear about mediums.
Yeah, it's not like the Amityville Horror House where we pretty much know they made that all up for the movie deal. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's kind of weird.
Yeah. Thank you. June 6th, everybody.
That's when it happened.
This is the day.
Now, like Ashley's and completely by accident, my story also takes place here in Georgia. And in fact, it happened right in our hometown. Janice Buttrum was born in 1963 to alcoholic parents who weren't very interested in taking care of a child.
Yeah, it's not starting off great.
Not great yet.
Ugh.
Doesn't get better either. Mm. Janice had just a terrible childhood. She lived in filth. She lived in an old van out in the yard. That was her bedroom.
Oh, no.
She wore clothes that her parents found in dumps. She was physically and emotionally abused. Teachers and social workers at the time said Janice was the most neglected child they had ever encountered.
Oh, see, why even bother?
Yeah, why do you want a child if you're just going to treat them like this?
Yeah.
They probably didn't want a child.
Well, no, they probably didn't, but there are way better ways to go about that.
Well, her mother immediately gave her up to stand-in caregivers, foster parents, whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
And that's who was raising her. I saw them called step-parents a lot, but that didn't seem right. I don't think they were step-parents.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was just something she said. Like she called them.
She would also go without shoes all the time, even in the winter.
Oh.
She smelled bad. She wasn't comfortable talking to people. And, just because all these things combined, she didn't really have any friends at school either.
Oh. Well, she probably wasn't doing very well at school either because, her basic needs aren't being met.
Right. She's living in a van out in the yard.
Yeah.
Now, around age 14, she was put into foster care. Mm-hmm. And while in foster care, she's also sexually assaulted.
Oh, God.
Now, some of the articles I read said that it was by the foster parents themselves. Others said that she met an older man, and it was this man and his friend that actually assaulted her. But honestly, both of those could be accurate.
Yeah.
It could have happened both places.
Yeah.
Eventually, she is sent back to live with her regular step parents, foster parents, whatever you wanted to call the first set of parents she was with.
Okay.
She does go back to them, and when she gets back there at her home in Adairsville, Georgia, her mother introduces her to a man named Danny Buttrum, who at the time was 26 years old and prone to violent outbursts.
Oh, lovely. Now, how old is
Janice? Is 15.
Oh.
So he's a good 11 years older than her.
Yeah.
And of course, they meet and immediately just start dating, and it isn't long before they are actually married.
Oh, wow.
But Danny is, like I said, prone to violent outbursts and actually beats Janice himself multiple times.
Oh, I'm not shocked by that. God, that's awful.
Danny battled with violent impulses that were so severe, he once checked himself into a psychiatric hospital in Rome just because he was afraid he was going to rape somebody.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Despite all this, like I said, Janice and Danny were married, and in 1980, they moved from their home in Adairsville, Georgia to Dalton, Georgia. And there they were living in the Country Boy Motel.
Oh, my God. I know that place.
You know where it is?
Yes.
Ashley lives in Dalton, too, you guys.
Yeah.
So she knows. She knows what we're talking about. So they were living at the Country Boy Motel with their 19-month-old daughter, Marlena. And Janice, who was now 17, is pregnant with their second child as well.
Oh, wow. And you know what? At first, I was like, why would you stay with him? But this is all she's known.
Yeah, she doesn't know anything else.
Yeah. You can't blame her.
And I just wanted to give kind of a brief background on Janice because I know that she is our perpetrator in the story.
Right.
I know that she is the, quote, bad guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like it's really important to understand how people get to that point sometimes.
Yeah. I always wonder, nature versus nurture. Do we all have an inherent good or evil? But a lot of this seems very environmental.
You can't get through all of the stuff she went through without severe emotional trauma.
Yeah, exactly.
Which just all played into our next events.
Uh-oh.
Now, because this happened in such a small town here in Georgia, and it happened back in the 80s, there's not a lot of sources out there that talk about this murder in particular.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you as much information as I could get.
Okay.
But this is a little bit of a shorter story, but I still thought it was important to tell this story.
I will say that people to this day here in town do know this story.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like if you mention this, I know some people that I've talked to are like, oh yeah, I know this. Yeah, it's a pretty big one.
It had a big impact on
It
the city.
Yeah.
On September 2nd, 1981, Danny, Janice, and baby Marlena were out riding around, and Danny, who was drunk, said that he wanted to go pick up a girl.
Oh, come on.
With his wife and baby. So they stop several times, and Danny makes a few unsuccessful passes at 4 or so different women.
Sorry, I mean, come on.
He's drunk.
Yeah, I just
picture
out
here, leaving his wife and baby in the car so he can go try and pick up women.
Yeah, I'm sure they see his wife and daughter in the car. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. So, like I said, obviously they were unsuccessful at this. So eventually they head back to their motel, and it's the early morning hours at this point. It's 4 a.m. And can I just say, why are you out at 4 a.m. with your baby?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
But anyway, Danny has not given up on finding another woman to have sex with, despite it being 4 a.m.
All right, persistent. Gotcha.
So that's when they decide to go next door to the room of Demetra Faye Parker. Demetra had recently moved to Dalton from Kenton, Tennessee, to be closer to her boyfriend. She was 19 years old, and she had actually befriended the couple next door. She was staying in the room at the motel right next door to them.
Okay.
She even occasionally babysat baby Marlena for them. They were kind of friends. They'd hang out.
Well, they're neighbors.
Which is why when they go over to her room, they knock on the door just frantically saying that the baby was sick and they need help. But when Demetra opens the door, instead, the couple forced their way in and attacked her.
Oh, man.
Now, I just wanted to give a little warning that the descriptions of this crime are a little graphic. So younger listeners probably should not listen.
Yeah, trigger warning.
Yeah, all that stuff.
All that stuff.
So what the couple does is they come in the room with their toddler,
Oh my God.
who they then put down in the floor to play as they beat, raped, and sodomized Demetra.
Oh my God.
They then took out a pocket knife and took turns stabbing her 97 times.
Ugh.
And now this is a pocket knife. This only is making like 2-inch deep stab wounds.
Yeah.
So rather than inflicting, life-threatening injuries in 1 or 2 stabs, it's just extended torture.
God.
They also bit her. They slashed open her stomach. They forced a plastic toothbrush holder into her vagina. All of this happened before she succumbed to her injuries. And Janice played just as big of a role in this as Danny did, even going so far as to perform oral sex on the victim as she lay dying.
Oh my God.
This
I
was
didn't realize
so
how
horrendous, this crime.
Yeah, I didn't realize how bad.
All while their toddler is playing in the floor. So after the attack, around 5 a.m., the Buttrums took their baby and they drove to a truck stop, which is where Danny worked at the time. Danny borrowed $20 from his manager and basically said, hey, if anybody asks you, you didn't see us. But Demetra's body was very quickly discovered, and the manager called the police, and the manager of the motel told police that Demetra had been hanging out with the Buttrums the day before, and that the Buttrums had just checked out of their room. So police go in to search the empty hotel room. Since they're not there, they don't have to get permission.
Right.
And they search through the room and they find a bloody bar of soap and a bloody washcloth inside the bathroom.
Dumb.
And
I'm not trying to say it, but like, if you're gonna, they had a bathroom in the, anyway.
No planning went into this at
no
all.
planning.
And, the bloody washcloth and stuff is enough to issue an arrest warrant for both of them.
Good.
And they start investigating, and police move so quickly on this case.
Oh, good.
They start investigating, and I guess one of the first people they interviewed was Danny's mother. And she tells them that Danny asked her to wire money to them in Pensacola, Florida.
Oh, wow.
Which I've actually been there on vacation a few times. Like, I know where that is too.
They must have been driving like all day.
They must have just like took off towards Pensacola as soon as that was over.
Wow.
So before noon on September 4th, which was the very next day after the crime, police found and arrested both Janice and Danny Buttrum in Pensacola, Florida.
Wow. That's super quick.
The very next day.
Did you happen to find if they were on like drugs or...
I didn't see anything about it anywhere I read, but like I said, there wasn't very many sources.
Yeah.
The fact that they're staying up all night kind of makes me wonder.
That was the biggest thing, yeah. And then able to drive all day.
Yeah, so I can't say for sure. I'm not going to say that they were
right,
but it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
Now, after she's arrested, Janice gives several different statements to police, all with slightly different details, but she insists that she did not play that big of a role.
Huh.
She swears that there was no oral sex happening and that she didn't take part in the rape. She only stabbed Demetra out of jealousy because she was waiting outside the room and she walked in to see Danny about to have sex with this woman and she got jealous and stabbed her.
Okay.
Despite being with him when he was trying to pick up women and apparently being okay with it then.
Yeah.
But now she's not okay with it. Now she's so not okay with it, she's going to kill a woman.
Yeah.
Ultimately, both Janice and Danny were found guilty of murder. Obviously. I mean, they had evidence all over the place. And they were both given the death penalty. Now, at just 17 years old.
Oh, I forgot she was 17.
17 years old.
Wow.
Janice is now the youngest woman to ever be sentenced to death in the U.S. Just a week after the verdict, Danny hung himself in his cell.
Oh, you coward.
I know. That one made me really angry.
Ugh. I mean, either way, but like, really?
Yeah. Janice was set to be executed sometime between October 26th and November 2nd of 1987. But because of a lot of outside pressure from the fact that she was a minor at the time, and then I actually read that there was some problems with the prosecution's conduct or something like that. I'm assuming it was a combination of both. Because of these things, the sentence was overturned by a federal judge, and her death sentence was converted to 3 consecutive life sentences with no possibility of parole.
Okay, so she just stays in prison.
She just stays in prison.
Okay.
She actually gave birth to her second child while in prison.
Wow.
And she's currently being held in Pulaski State Prison in Hawkinsville, Georgia. And she is about 57 years old at this point.
She's still alive.
Yep. You can see pictures of her on the internet. Like, can you imagine being 17 years old, living this terrible life, marrying this much older guy who's clearly a predator?
Yeah.
Like, she didn't stand a chance.
No, but she knew right from wrong.
Yeah, you have that compass inside you that tells you what's okay and what isn't.
Yeah, she knew what was happening. I feel bad for her. This is the Ed Kemper thing. Like, I feel bad for her history, but she made the choices. I know. It's such a hard one because I feel so terrible for her life and how she ended up in this situation. And I keep thinking, if I was in that situation at 17 years old, my husband wanted to do these things, I'm pregnant, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, what would I do? Yeah.
I'd probably just go along with whatever he wanted.
And honestly, I mean, if he's abusive, if they were on drugs, I mean, not to say that they were, but you know, all of that stuff plays a factor.
Yeah. And it's just the whole story from every perspective. The victim, Janice, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is.
And even baby Marlena, like she was in the room. Just
playing. I mean, she's doing what a baby does.
My only hope is that at 19 months old, she didn't remember anything.
Yeah. She probably had some psychological...
She probably needed therapy.
Yeah.
But that is the story that happened right here in our own hometown.
I believe that's the worst one that's ever happened. Thankfully.
Yeah.
I believe that's the biggest story we have in Dalton.
And it's a rough one.
It is a rough one. I didn't realize it was even that bad. Thanks for listening.
Like us on Facebook at True Crimes and Weird Times Podcast.
Follow us on Instagram at True Crimes Weird Times.
Email us your stories at truecrimesweirdtimes@gmail.com.
Can't wait for the next episode? Check out our Patreon for bonus episodes and more.
And if you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review.
Bye!